r/antiwork. Some Bob says. Should occasionally skip the avocado toast, I guess. Included photo. Chaotic Goku says. I swear I just googled this film and now it shows up everywhere. Lambisco says. Have you considered giving up food and water? Your landlord's mortgage won't pay itself. The Ralph Euxey says. Rent is theft. CPT My Captain says. Once all the evil landlords are taken out, all property will be owned by the banks. Your old landlord will be the least of your problems. Your landlord owned the house, the bank owned your landlord. The bank is just cutting out the middleman. Bright Wolverine 304 says. It's starting to fall apart though as people totally reach the limit of being able to survive. There's a house down the road from me for sale, listed 6 months ago for $249k. They keep marking it down, and it's now $180k still with no takers. Fat Dude 333 says. So 3 years ago we moved, and I briefly thought about renting out our starter home, but between taxes, insurance, mortgage payments, and needing to save for larger home maintenance items, roof, furnace, etc. At best we'd break even renting it out. At worst if you have a shitty tenant you'd be out thousands of dollars while they destroy your house, and it takes a year to evict them. Nope, we sold the house and threw all the proceeds into VTSAX, which in 15 years should outperform the future sale of a fully paid off house without the headache of being a landlord. I love you guys that think renting should be free, like houses last forever with no maintenance and the government just forgoes property taxes. r/antiwork. Ned Mac 1 says. Tariff Effects. I posted a comment similar to this in r/gens, which, if anyone is familiar with how that sub has been doing, you can anticipate the results. So everyone is complaining about morals this and moral that, but let's talk economics here. I've since moved into furniture sales, so I can only give insight from my area of expertise, but these prospective tariffs are about to seriously frick us over. Most furniture in the US, or at least in my company, is imported from manufacturers in Southeast Asia. China is also included. Okay, no big deal. Furniture is gonna get expensive, but who can afford a house anyways? Does anyone realize how much shit comes from Southeast Asia? Electronics, clothing, out of season crops, seafood, the wood we use for construction, the metal, the stone. Every single American industry imports something from across the world. And if it's truly 100% American sourced, then it's gonna be hella expensive. So yeah. Okay, prices are gonna go up. But hey, as a salesman, if my prices go up, then I guess that means more money for me, right? Well, if I made commission, sure, but the cost of living also goes up, and likely I won't be able to afford rent, and food, and clothing, and everything else I already struggle with. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case is already in process. They've started a hiring freeze in my company. No more new hires, coffee machine is being removed. Oh, and we know you're understaffed already, but that just means y'all will make more money. For us, they whisper, I'm seeing many people losing their jobs through layoffs right now too. So good luck everyone. I'm sorry to say, but we're all frick edition. A Cobra says. He will tank the economy with tariffs. In 2 years people will learn the error of their ways with a recession and vote at least the House or Senate back to the Democrats. And then he is done. Big Bad Binky says. Your assumption that there will be learning, and not a more simplified blaming of the others, causes me to think you're not learning yourself. And I only say this cause I'm already drunk, but buck up, bizacch, and figure this shit out. Ralphone 1248 says. Everyone is complaining housing is expensive. But, 50 years ago everything was expensive. Shoes, clothing, playing cards, toys, TVs, magazines, car repairs, bicycles, coffee makers, fans, air conditioners, microwaves when they were first invented, but the stuff was made in the USA. Then, both Dems and Repubs promoted free trade. All that stuff became cheaper. But the jobs went out of the USA. The main problem is in the last 50 years is the labor laws in the USA gave more power to management and less power to workers. So, even if Trump and tariffs bring the jobs back, they will be in a union, subject to arbitration, at will employment jobs. Maninamasa Misu says. Hot tubs. Same thing. Building materials, same thing. Lumber prices are still sky high. Untargeted tariffs are a disaster for manufacturing and construction. D. Zerogman says. Companies are already beginning to lay off workers. Better half works for a nationwide company. There are talks of cutting bonuses, raises and laying off workers in anticipation of the new MAGA administration. They're forecasting a downturn with the MAGA destruction of our country. They see the incoming pain, so they are preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. What's hilarious is some of the staunchest maggots she works with are still on cloud 9. Unfortunately for them, it's gonna suck, just as bad for them as it will for us. They just don't see it yet. r/anti-work. JT says. I'm tired of being required to work extra hours as a salaried manager, but not being paid for it. It would be one thing if me being more productive led to me being able to go home earlier, but that's just not how retail management jobs work. I have to be there as long as my subordinates are there, and of course I will have to be there before and after them to plan and clean up for next shift. And things will always come up that cause me to stay later. Why are our labor laws for salary workers so ancient? It's well known that companies will put their managers on salary because then they can legally overwork and underpay them. Have there been any pushes to reduce the scope of the definition of an exempt worker? If me working extra hours is an essential part of my job as a salaried manager, why shouldn't I be paid for those hours? Waffle77 says. If you're working a retail management job as salaried exempt, you should expect long hours and ask for a salary that compensates for those hours. Don't think of it as working 40 hours a week making X dollars an hour if you know you're going to be working more than that. These are questions you should ask before accepting a job. Liftica says. I think Biden tried to change some of this. But that other guy who promised to give us cheap eggs and destroy the economy with tariffs won. Have fun getting eggs though when he deports all of those people stealing those jobs in fields that Americans want to work so bad. Anothariada says. It's ridiculous really. No hours you work should be unpaid. They'll dangle some carrot. I've known store managers doing 50 over 60 hours. That's 50-ish hours a month unpaid. At UK minimum wage rounding up that's about 6k a year you just worked for free. Salaried of den more. Not bloody likely. Nigel says. Trump judge strike down the overtime rule changes. But don't worry, if Trump gets his way, overtime pay for everyone will be gone. 375 and strokes says. I would never work salaried for less than $250,000 just for this reason. Jinghis Frog says. Yeah, it sucks. That's why I left it. Not to get political, but any chance of this changing flew out the window a few weeks ago. Rised Ingentity says. I was a salaried manager once. I usually had to work an extra 10 hours a week with no pay. Never again. Garbage and Dog says. Have you asked for a demotion? r/anti-work. Psychedelic Cheese says. Hate my job more every day. My boss is micromanaging me into a breakdown. I'm really struggling with my job lately and I need to vent. My boss micromanages me to an unbearable degree. He gives me tasks to do, and then when I complete them, he tells me I'm not doing it right. It feels like, no matter what I do, it's never good enough. For example, I work at a modeling agency. He instructed me to contact only top-tier photographers for our models to shoot with. I took that advice seriously and invited some great photographers to the agency to build connections. Once I got that done, he suddenly said it wasn't enough and wanted me to reach out to student photographers for test shoots instead. Initially, he said getting 2 test shoots a month would be great. Well, within 2 weeks, I managed to line up 5. But then he told me I wasn't doing enough and that the dynamic was off. I try to take the initiative to make connections, but it feels like my efforts go unrecognized, and that really brings me down. When it comes to bookings, he insists on being a firm booker. There was a situation where a client wanted to book one of our top models for a campaign, and I suggested we go higher with the price since he's a top talent. My boss didn't take my advice seriously and was more concerned about losing the client. He completely missed my point about not devaluing our talent. He ended up giving them a lower offer, and of course, they accepted it right away, leading to his regret. Now he's telling me that I need to practice being a booker, but he doubts my capabilities because I can't even manage basic bookings like test shoots. It's incredibly frustrating because I feel like if it weren't for my efforts, the company would have really struggled financially over the past few months. I created the entire business plan, advised him on investments, and suggested areas to save money. To top it all off, he checks my emails and has them all forwarded to him. I'm left feeling like I can't even handle the simplest tasks anymore. Am I exaggerating here, or is my boss really a mess? Clarence Papa says. And here I thought I was the only one who was slowly being micromangled to death. Beginning to think this is a blood sport for some people. Usanama Sorizo 2004 says. Look for a new job. It sucks, but he's never going to change, and you'll just get more and more burnt out. Then when you leave, he will absolutely realize what an asset he lost. College Student Life says. I took a pay cut to leave a job that micromanaged me into almost irreversible insanity. It was worth it. Sarcasmus Game says. Look, I worked in this industry and yes, your boss is a nightmare asshole relying solely on your work and he's also stealing your ideas. Recognize your boss, he's the leech who depends on the talent to hold him up. Stop putting in the effort to prove to him you can do the work because he knows you can, but is playing you, so he looks like the efficient one. Sooner or later he'll end up shoving you aside when he finds someone else to leech off of. Look, you know the industry and have done everything, from writing the business plan to booking the photographers. So it's either time for you to walk away and start your own agency, or put out your resume to competing agencies and go to work for someone who actually appreciates your talent. Sky Savi says. My boss recently started a lovely new habit, /s, where she stands right behind me and watches me make a phone call or write emails. When I finish, she goes into all the wording I should have used, the way I prioritize the content of the call/email, and what should the outcome be. I'm not kidding when I say right behind me. There is maybe a tiny amount of space before she's touching me, literally over my shoulder. Even the other coworkers are in shock at how brazen she is getting. But she has her own habits with them too, like how she sees one girl doing 4 things at once, says since you're not busy, dumps a big task on the desk and demands it be prioritized. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.